Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
You know, I actually don't know where to start today. I mean, it's overload. I miss one day, and this is an editing nightmare today. I mean, there's literally so much stuff here. So the best I can tell you is, we can't do everything here in the opening segment, folks, so you're just going to have to hang in there and be tough and trust. And we'll get to all that matters. If I don't talk about it, it's not worth knowing. You can always trust that, too. Great to be back. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. So I'm going through the audio sound bites today, one of the things that I made a point to do, and I find out that I'm the only guy in America that has a problem with the Pope. And every soundbite I have here, where I am mentioned, is filled with inaccuracy after inaccuracy after inaccuracy, things I've supposedly said, and about some other things too. So there's that on the edge of it. Boehner, of course, in the aftermath of that, the Pope's visit concluding. Interesting anecdote to tell you about that, to give you an indication. Remember, point I made on Thursday, which I think is a profound point because it relates to how we attempt to educate people, how to inform people. You know, one of my quests here from the beginning has been to inform people, educate people, sort of train people, if you will, to spot liberalism. The belief that liberalism is the source of the vast majority of our problems. Clearly not all, but the vast majority. Liberals and liberalism, and the more people trained to spot it, I think, have always believed that it'd go a long way to go in defeating it. I think it does need to be defeated. And the left pulled off an amazing feat last week that I commented on Thursday, and I've got a little anecdote to build on it. And the point I made last week was, okay, here you have Pope Francis, who is traveling the world enunciating clearly. I don't care what you want to call me for pointing this out, but you have a Pope, the Vicar of Christ, who's out articulating a left-wing agenda. It's such a left-wing agenda that Obama has adopted it and is in fact hiding behind the Pope and using the Pope to advance his own agenda. Just pointing that out causes people to throw daggers at me. But here's the point. It's not just the Pope. One of the quests that we've had here on this program is to try to get people, even now, even when he's supposedly in lame duck status, which isn't the case either, has been to try to instruct people on just how radical and how extreme Obama is and his agenda. But how tough is that to do when Obama regularly co-opts the Speaker of the House, when he co-opts the Republican leader in the Senate, McConnell, when he is able to co-opt the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and then finally added to that list, and there's many more on it, but you add to that list, here comes the Pope Francis. I mean, these are all people considered to be not radical, not extreme. They're just mainstream people. And you realize how difficult it is to try to portray Obama as he really is, for what he really is, the true radical extremist, when all of those other people appear to be at home with him and on the same team with him, agenda-wise. It's just really, really difficult. It's almost impossible. Talking about low-information voters here, it's almost impossible to try to tell people that Obama is this extreme leftist whose policies have wrought great harm to when all these other supposedly mainstream people are on the same page with him. It's really, really tough. You just add the Pope to that, and it gets even tougher. And I'll show you how it works. I have a friend of mine who is every bit the conservative I am, who is probably more alarmed about Obama than even I have been, if you can believe that. This guy constantly is telling me I'm not going far enough in my criticism of Obama and in my predictions of what all of this means. He's not a kook, not a tinfoil hat guy. He's constantly telling me that I need to go a little bit further than what I'm doing because there's more to be told than I am telling and people need to know, blah, blah, blah. So, when this current pope comes upon the scene, my friend sends me emails. I don't talk to people on the phone because I can't, so everything is by email or text message, what have you. So he says to me, look out for this guy. And he's Catholic, but look out for this. This is. And then he sounded all the usual warnings about how this guy is using the papacy to advance a left-wing economic and social, cultural agenda. He's very, very worried about it. And he said, you need to keep people on up to speed on this, blah, blah. So apparently the Pope on the weekend, Friday night or Saturday, was in Philadelphia and apparently delivered just one heck of a great, great speech about the Declaration of Independence in America and liberty. And I get a note from this guy, my friend. He says, you know what? I may have been wrong. I may have been wrong. This guy gave what is Pope. He said, this guy one of the best speeches I have ever seen. I may have, this guy sounds like Rush. He sounds like he totally gets it. And he was just going on and on and on about how wonderful the Pope's speech was and how meaningful it was. Speech at Independence Hall was respectful of the Declaration, individualism, religious freedom. And my friend said, maybe I got it wrong. And I wrote back and I said, see, this is how difficult it is. Even you now have been persuaded to abandon what you know to be true. And I reminded him all of these months prior where he's been warning me of all of these terrible left-wing things that are happening right in front of everybody's eyes that nobody's seeing. He warning me about the Pope being a wolf in sheep's clothing regarding a political agenda as well as being Pope and so forth. And in one speech that hit a home run that speech was able to make my friend forget everything he knew. He sends me this note claiming he had gotten it all wrong. So I wrote him back and I said, see, this is exactly how it happens. Look at you. And I reminded him, you've been warning me. You've been telling me I need to ramp it up. You've been warning me that this Pope is disguising who he is with a left-wing agenda and so forth and so on. Now, one speech makes you forget all that. And I said, now, this is how it happens. So because of that one speech that you heard the Pope give, you've forgotten everything that he said during the week that you disagree with. And he said, yeah, you're right. I guess that's why they pay you the big bucks. But this is how it happens, folks. This is why the co-opting of Boehner and McConnell has been so bad. It's not just what Boehner and McConnell did or didn't do. It is that they, by their actions and inactions, contributed to creating the illusion, and believe me it is, that Obama's a mainstream, harmless, certainly not a radical politician, when he is the most radical elected president we have ever had. Well, not elected, radical president, period, however we've had presidents. But when you have these so-called Republican mainstream leaders helping his agenda along, not opposing him, and in fact opposing what they call the crazies in their own party, how can you expect low-information voters to accept the premise that Obama's a radical? How can you expect anybody to believe that with all this other evidence that seems to contradict it? It just gets harder and harder and harder to do. And I would remind you of the John O'Sullivan law, and that is that any organization that is not demonstrably conservative day in and day out will become liberal. It just does. If someone or a group is not actively conservative, practicing it, enforcing it, do it, whatever it takes every day, they will become liberal. And this is what's happened to the Republican Party in a sense. So now Obama's up at the UN today, and he basically spelled out what he intends to do for the rest of this term. There's so much fraud. You know, there's Snerdley came in today. What's this NASA news? Is NASA news all exciting? He said, yeah, they found flowing water up there. No kidding? Wow. Snerdley said, flowing water on Mars. I said, why does that excite you? What, do you go in there next week? What's the big deal about flowing water on Mars? I don't know, ma'am. It just, wow. I said, you know what? When they start selling iPhones on Mars, that's when it'll matter to me. I said, what do you think they're going to do with this news? I said, look at the temperature data that has been reported by NASA, has been made up. It's fraudulent for however many years. There isn't any warming. There hasn't been for 18 and a half years. And yet they're lying about it. They're just making up the amount of ice at the North and South Poles. They're making up the temperatures. They're lying and making up false charts and so forth. So what's to stop them from making up something that happened on Mars that will help advance their left-wing agenda on this planet? And Snerdley paused. Oh, yeah, you're right. You know, when I play golf with excellent golfers, I ask them, does it ever get boring playing well? Does it ever get boring hitting shot after shot where you want to hit it? And they all look at me and smile and they say, never. Well, folks, it never gets boring being right either, like I am. But it doesn't mean it is any less frustrating. Being right and being alone is a challenging existence. So, okay, so there's flowing water on Mars. Yip, yahoo. And hey, you know me. I'm Science 101, big-time guy, tech advance it. You know it. I'm all in. But NASA has been corrupted by the current regime. I want to find out what they're going to tell us. Okay, flowing water on Mars. If we're even to believe that, what are they going to tell us that means? That's what I'm going to wait for. Because I guarantee you, let's just wait and see. This is September 28th. Let's just wait and see. Don't know how long it's going to take. But this news that there is flowing water on Mars is somehow going to find its way into a technique to advance the leftist agenda. I don't know what it is. I would assume it would be something to do with global warming, and maybe there was once an advanced civilization. If they say they found flowing water, next they're going to find a graveyard. And then they're going to be able to say in the graveyard is a dead, advanced civilization. What killed them? Global, well, who knows? This is a bit, of course, of an extreme exaggeration, but this is what happens. How many of you remember from the Pope's visit a 5-year-old girl approaching the Pope, begging him to keep talking about illegal immigration and immigrants and so forth? How many of you have seen that story, saw the video of it? How many of you are aware of it? For those of you who are, understand it was a setup. The 5-year-old girl was rehearsed. The whole thing was planned out. It's nothing more than a deep public relations campaign. And so each and every day we are challenged here with just the daily news and trying to determine which of it is real and how much of it is totally fraudulent and made up in order to advance a particular political agenda. That cannot be denied. Yeah, you know, real question, are the waters on Mars rising or falling? Now that we've discovered flowing water, are the levels rising or falling? It's wide open. I know you might think that I'm a little bit off the beaten path here. Fine and dandy. You've thought that, but let's just wait and see, give it some time. And I'm telling you, this is going to find its way into the left-wing science agenda, which is another element of our life or aspect that has been corrupted. And by corrupted, I mean what is real is being masked or hidden and is instead being lied about. Okay, so we've got that. We've got Trump. The news on Trump is that he and Carson are pulling dead even now, almost. It's a Wall Street Journal report. Carson continues to rise on the basis of his comments about a Muslim president and how he wouldn't support one if they did not place the Constitution first. The drive-by media paid some attention, they're all ecstatic that Trump has leveled off. They think that it's peaked, that he may even now be on the downside. Trump today announced his tax plan. And already I'm getting emails from Rush, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. I just look at Trump's tax plan and it's just like Obama's. I said, it is? Yeah. Wait till you see it. It's just like Obama's. Tax the rich, no taxes for the middle classes. I'll look into it. Don't make up your mind until I've had a chance to go through it. I'll tell you what to think about it, as I always do. We've got, all of the ramifications of Boehner resigning and all the people weighing in on why. A lot of people wanting to take credit for this. Others are looking forward to what it now means. Kevin McCarthy going to be the new speaker. Is that going to make any difference? Mitch McConnell now is next in the crosshairs. It's clear that the conservatives in Congress, in the House of Representatives, engineered this. But it's like I also told Snerdley, folks, I really hate being a font here of pessimism, because I'm not a pessimist. I'm not negative at all. But how excited should we be to get rid of the guy after the damage has been done? I mean, we want to take credit. Everybody knew. It's been widely understood now that as soon as Boehner got his day with Pope Francis, that was the bucket list being completed. That was it. Then he could retire. And, in fact, many of the conservative caucus are telling us that Boehner had agreed to go months ago and negotiated to hold on through the Pope, which they permitted to happen. So, anyway, that's a brief setting of the table. There's still much more out there besides all these subjects. Plenty of stuff. I can't wait to get to all of it with you when we get back, so don't go away. So here we go, already in the email. What do you mean a 5-year-old girl gave the Pope that it was fake? Look. A Los Angeles-based pro-illegal immigration group trained a 5-year-old girl who approached Pope Francis during his parade in Washington for a photo op to promote amnesty. Sophie Cruz. It's even in the Washington Post. This is a Breitbart story. But in the Washington Post, of all places, Alicia Flores, executive director of La Hermanidad in Los Angeles, said that the group chose Sophie to approach the Pope after a similar plan worked in Rome, involving another young girl. Raul Cruz, who came to the U.S. 10 years ago, then agreed to let his daughter partake in the plan so the Pope could hear their message. In other words, this was a stunt, and it was organized by immigration advocacy groups that have tried to do the same thing and did do the same thing back in Rome. This girl and her family were flown to Washington as part of a group of 6 children and 19 adults with the hope of delivering their message on immigration. Now, the point, are you seriously criticizing a 5? No, folks, I'm not. I'm just telling you that what you saw did not spontaneously happen. A 5-year-old girl didn't find miraculously her way to the Pope's parade and didn't coincidentally get close enough to the Pope to be able to hand him a message that she, at age 5, personally crafted. The whole thing was the result of rehearsals. The little girl was chosen for the mission. It was made to look real. It was meant to tug people's heartstrings. It was meant to soften opposition to illegal immigration. And it worked as designed. But none of it was genuine. It was all a stunt. And I only tell you this because this is how people on that side of the political aisle engineer things and how things get corrupted. And people think what is real isn't, or isn't real is. Hi, how are you? Great to have you back here, the Rush Limbaugh and the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Okay, I now have in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, the Trump tax plan, complete with some Trump excerpts about the tax plan, sound bites. And we'll get to that here in just a second. I just need to do some Boehner stuff here. Oh, by the way, thanks to Buck Sexton for being here on Friday. This is how, at the Value Voters Summit in Washington. It's held every year toward the end of September. Marco Rubio was speaking and actually made the announcement to the crowd. This is how it sounded.
How can it be that we sent a Republican majority to Congress, and yet they're still not able to stop our country from sliding in the wrong direction? And we'll see how things progress. Just a few minutes ago, Speaker Boehner announced that he will be resigning.
Now, that applause went on and on and on and on and on, and it was over the top. And this is something that a number of people have been attempting to make happen for months now, going into years. And as is the usual case in the aftermath of something like this, there are all kinds of stories. And they run the gamut from who made it happen, who gets credit for it, who engineered it, why did it happen, what does it mean going forward, and all of that. The most important aspect of this to me is that whoever is responsible for this is not through. They are actually going now to target Mitch McConnell on the same basis. Now, from what I understand, Ted Cruz was deeply involved in this. To tell a long story very short, Cruz became aware very soon upon arriving at the Senate that he was going to have a tough time making a difference there because he was so outnumbered, because the leadership was so entrenched. And the leadership in the Senate, just like the leadership in the House, and we've been through all the reasons. I mean, I take the time and list them again. Just was not going to stop Obama. They weren't even going to try to make it look like they were going to stop Obama, except to people they were not telling the truth to at election time, us. They were apparently very willing to tell us that they were going to do everything they could to stop Obamacare, to repeal Obamacare. I mean, you know the drill. But never once did anything serious ever happen to derail, stop, slow down any aspect of the Obama agenda. Now, the reasons for that are also multifaceted, and we've been through all of them. But, folks, the big reason for all of this is money. At the end of the day, it's always about money. It always has been about money in politics. It's just more prevalent now than ever. Do you know why we did the Iran deal, just for example? Do you know why why the Corker bill exists as it does? Do you know why there was never any serious effort to stop Obama in making the Iran deal? Do you have any idea? It was money. There was a news story, I think it was the UK Daily Mail. If not, it was something similar. The Iranian national airline, such as it is falling apart. Their aircraft are old, dilapidated, and because the sanctions have been in place, they've been unable to buy new aircraft, replacement aircraft, or parts to repair what they have now. So basically, their national airline is a joke. They, in Iran, the mullahs, have ordered a number of replacement aircraft made by Boeing. Boeing, therefore, wants the deal. But in order for the deal to happen, $150 billion in frozen Iranian assets needs to be unfrozen. Now, Boeing is a contributor to the Republican Party. I wish I could remember what newspaper I read this in. On the top of my head, I think it's a Daily Mail, but it might very easily could be something else. But the bottom line was that Republican politicians, elected officials, basically had to please a very well-to-do series of donors that were going to be able to engage in new business with Iran if the sanctions were lifted. And if you look at the Corker bill really all it was about was lifting the sanctions by statute. Now, this is very important. The Corker bill secured the sanctions being lifted by statute. You know, I was watching the last Republican debate. It was an exchange between Ted Cruz and I think it was Kasich. And Kasich, they were having an argument about what you do if Iran cheats on the deal. And Cruz was making it very clear that we were never going to find out if Iran cheated because they were in total control of the inspection process. And they are. If we want to lodge a complaint, it's 24 days before we can take action, and they have to grant us permission to come in. But they, the Iranians, by virtue of this deal, do their own inspection first. So it's a joke. There is no inspection process. There's no verification whatsoever. And Kasich was saying to Cruz, look, if they violate it, we just slap the sanctions back on them. And I'm yelling at the TV, no, we can't slap the sanctions back on them. They have been lifted by statute. The sanctions have not been lifted temporarily, and they've not been lifted per se as part of the deal. They have been lifted by virtue of the Corker Bill, which is a statutory law. Now, the statutes have thus maintained that the Iranians are going to get their $150 billion, whether they cheat or not. And so the Iranian nuclear deal, when it comes to the debate in Washington, never really was about Iran and nuclear weapons. It was about money, economic news. It was about American corporations, and Boeing's not the only one that want to do business with Iran. And when Iran's got $150 billion freed up, it's been frozen, they can buy enough terrorism with that, have some left over to revamp their airline. I'm going to have to find out what this is. It was Bloomberg that had this story. It was Bloomberg News that had the story that it was Boeing and Airbus combined that wanted to make a deal with Iran on new aircraft for this dilapidated Iranian airline. Now, all the while this debate's raging, we are treated to story after story that the parameters of the debate center on whether or not it makes sense that Iran is permitted to get a nuclear weapon. That was never what this was about. And all of us were incredulous about the Corker Bill. Why even do it? Just if you're the Senate, you oppose Obama and you oppose Iran having nukes, just insist on the treaty clause. Just insist on this being a treaty. If you just do that, you solve the problem. Then you need 2/3 of the Senate to ratify it, and it's not automatic. But the Corker Bill went into action and reversed the whole procedure for the treaty and basically turned this into nothing more than a statutory elimination or lifting of sanctions. So all the while, these elected officials are telling us they're going to stop Obama and Obamacare, and they're going to stop Obama on amnesty and illegal immigration. That's not what's going on. What's going on is that their donors are demanding that they get this and that from the Republicans in terms of policy and votes, and that's who the Republican officials in Washington, elected officials, are loyal to. So you can call that political system being corrupted or what have you. The point is, Ted Cruz was aware of all of this, and he decided there was no way, since he's so vastly outnumbered in the Senate, that what he instead did was work with the conservative members in the House to strengthen them, to focus them, and not that they needed it, but just to form some unity and to have a coordinated effort that was aimed at Boehner's resignation. Since Cruz was not going to be able to engineer a similar thing in the Senate because he was basically a party of one. So there's any number of people who you might, if you want to consider this in a doling out of credit sense, Cruz is right there at the top. But then you could also say that Mitch McConnell deserves a lot of credit, not because he wanted to get rid of Boehner, but just because of what he did. Just because constantly bottling up anything that would stop Obama, never taking on the Democrats, this fear of a government shutdown. Even this morning, I see some analysts on television, the worst thing that could happen is if there's a government shutdown. I don't know what it is. The Republicans just have this irrational fear of a government shutdown that is going to be the end of them and their 2016 presidential aspirations. And you talk about blind. There's an entire presidential campaign being waged out there, and a bunch of outsiders who've never been in politics before are leading the whole process. The insider experts, career politicians, you need a telescope to see them. Their poll numbers are so low. It's very clear what Republican voters and a lot of Americans want, and it's the exact opposite of what has been happening. So it was a fait accompli at some point. And I think Boehner holding on until Pope Francis's visit, that was a big deal to Boehner. Could then check that one off of his bucket list. But he's still got some time left, and he's insisting that he's going to make the most of it, just like Obama is, with whatever time left that he has. Got to take a brief time out. Much more straight ahead. Don't go away. Kicking off a busy, brand new broadcast week hosted by me, Rush Limbaugh, here at the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Go to the phones. We're going to get some in the first hour. This is Pete in Seattle. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here.
TributeFans.com/show.
Wait a minute. Wait, I cannot understand a word you're saying. Damn it. Pete, hang on. I want to see if we can get you on a different phone line somehow. All right, let's try it.
Or good afternoon where you are.
There it is. Now I can hear you. Thank you.
Honest people do not use the tactic of setting up plants in the audience. That is something the Clintons do. People that value truth don't need to do that. You talked about the 5-year-old girl that met with the Pope out of the crowd. Out of all the people that wanted to see the Pope, she goes running through security.
Right.
And gets in.
And then, of course,
I find that worrisome that people adulate somebody that does things like that.
You can't blame them. They saw it on television. It was real. This is the point. This is deep, deep PR. This is total devotion to the advancement of your agenda. This is something that our side does not do. I don't know if it's because our side doesn't even conceive of this kind of stuff, because, well, who knows why? I could only guess that it isn't real. They think if they try something staged like this, if they get caught, it's going to be exposed as a fraud, or it just doesn't occur to them for whatever reason. Or maybe they're lazy. I have no idea. But the point is, they've done this with the Pope twice now. They did it, don't forget, in Rome, and they've done it here. They did it in Washington, D.C., and you can say that honest people don't do this. And I would agree with you off top of that. And people that are not confident are the people who do this. People who think they have to stage events, stage manage events in order to make things look like something they are not, are people that are not confident of triumphing and winning by throwing whatever it is they believe out there and letting the people decide. They have to stage manage it, and they have to create these stunts. But the point is, now after the fact, this happened in Washington, so this is 5 days ago. Now, here I come, and whatever other news sources have this, Washington Post, Breitbart, here we come telling the truth about it. It isn't going to be believed. We're going to be seen as sourpusses. We're going to be seen as people sour grapes. They're going to say, you're just upset the Pope won. You're just upset that the Pope is loved by people. You're just upset you're not able to convince people. So that's what people are going to say, because they saw it on TV. It was real. They saw a little girl run out of the crowd. They say the Pope stop. They saw the little girl give the Pope a note. Miraculously, the news media found out what the note to the Pope was. And miraculously, it was made to look like even 5-year-old little girls believe in illegal immigration. The children even want illegal immigration. What kind of people are we to stand in the way of the wishes and the dreams of 5-year-old kids? And this is the effect it has. Remember now, we're talking about ordinary, everyday, low-information voters who happen to see this live or happen to watch it later on the news. It was real. It wasn't staged. At the time, nobody knew it was staged. Some may have suspected, but you pointed out some days later, it's not to great effect. We still do it. We're interested in truth and people knowing the truth about how things happen. I still have this belief that the more people that understand how the left does what it does and how they get what they get and how they make it look like they represent the majority of people when they don't, it's crucial to that day when we're able to say we beat them. But it's made all that much more difficult, as I say, when you have Republican leaders signing on to the Obama agenda. And when you have the Vicar of Christ signing on to the Obama agenda. How in the world do you tell people that agenda is an extreme left-wing radical agenda that's going to do great harm to this country? How do you tell people that? And furthermore, how do you tell people? You said a 5-year-old girl, this whole thing was staged. You look like the sourpuss when you point it out, even though it's the truth. Jeff in San Bruno, California, great to have you on the program, sir. Hi.
Dittos, Rush. Your credibility is why we listen. My wife and I and those around us that follow politics find credibility through you. So it's taken us as low information voters over the last 17, 18 years I've listened to you and made it able for me to see liberalism in its ways. And listening to the Pope, you were absolutely correct. We were surprised by what he didn't say and surprised by what he did say.
I suspect a lot of people were. It's just that nobody said so. I mean, it's the vicar of Christ. You're just not supposed to say these things. And when somebody does, oh, my God, geez. It makes people uncomfortable. I suspect that a whole bunch of people in the first 2 or 3 days of the Pope's visit were scratching their heads. But what are you going to do? I mean, these are people who lie to pollsters so that they're not found out. They're not going to tell anybody what they really think of what the Pope was doing. They'd rather not be known. So it's left to the spear carriers like us here. But that's fine. We'll be back. You know, it's funny here. The New York Times has a story. You know, all this time they've been telling us that Boehner was the reason there was gridlock. Right? So now the New York Times has a story worried about what Boehner leaving is going to mean for gridlock. So they're now admitting, indirectly, but they're admitting, the New York Times, that Boehner was not responsible for the gridlock. But that's not totally true either. But again, folks, there's nothing wrong with gridlock, especially now. The views expressed by the host of this program recently documented to be almost always right 99.8% of the time. It took 2 years to climb 0.1 of a percentage point. I had to be right consistently for that long just to raise it 0.1 of a point, but it happened. Welcome back, folks. It's great to have you here. Telephone number is 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton are revising. You know, I said not long ago these people are stuck in the 90s. The Clintons in terms of their worldview and how they deal with scandal and problems. And they are faced with a lot of problems now. A lot of donors are leaving the Clinton Global Foundation or Clinton Global Initiative. People are not showing up to the thing. This email, even Hillary is now using the term drip, 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 which I think was popularized by me on this program. And she was on with F. Chuck Todd yesterday, and you know he asked her a series of questions and just let her answer them and ramble and contradict herself, but he didn't point any of the contradictions out. But the point is that Bill Clinton's coming along now, and they're trying to revive this vast right-wing conspiracy again as the reason for Hillary's problems. Clinton on Friday said that he believes Republicans are exaggerating scandals against his wife, using the scrutiny over her email use while at the State Department to tear her down. He was on Fareed Zakaria Global Positioning Satellite, I guess the name of his show. Yeah, you know what, Fareed? By the way, why do you call yourself GPS? What? I've never figured that out. Just because I know you say the word world a lot. You think you're a world guy? Is that why you GPS world? Well, anyway, Fareed, I think there's just lots of people who want there to be a race out there for different reasons. So they thought the only way they could make it a race was a full-scale frontal assault on Hillary. I know that's kind of a weird thing to envision, a frontal assault on my wife, but I think that's what it is. This email thing for Reid, it just became the biggest story in the world. It's all the Republicans do. And that's how they're doing it, folks. They're trying to once again make everybody think that Hillary is sailing along fine, nothing wrong, nobody doing anything that she disapproved of, or vice versa. And this vast right-wing conspiracy has come back to life once again to derail Hillary Clinton's ambitions yet again. That's all they know to do. Meanwhile, the list of policy failures, embarrassments, takes 3 pages to print out. There's an internet joke, one of these internet things going around, and it's Trump talking to Hillary about all of her scandals. And Trump says, there's this one out there, you're never going to get past this one. Oh, you mean the one where, and then list it like the Benghazi. No, Trump says, the other one. And it keeps going that way for 3 pages. It's an intriguing way of listing every boondoggle, every mistake, every lie, and some of them include the Clinton administration. It's just a great way to illustrate the woman's total lack of honesty and total incompetence. So anyway, now it's time to blame the Republicans for this. In the meantime, on the Republican side, just a couple of straggler Boehner stories here before we get to the Trump tax plan, which he announced today. Washington Times has a story here that the headline is, top GOP official seeks McConnell ouster as Senate leader GOP brand is being damaged. And this is no less than a Republican National Committee vice chairman. He is the Louisiana Republican chairman, Roger Villaire. And he wrote in a Facebook posting that McConnell needs to resign. He said that Mitch is a good and honorable guy, but the base is leaving our party. I'm out in the field all the time. He told us to the Washington Times, I'm out in the field all the time. We have all of our elections this year for state offices. And McConnell and all this is hurting us tremendously with our elections because the base is not showing up. He said, if we lose the battle, we will never win the presidency again in my lifetime. He's 66 years old. He says, I've worked for 12 years as chairman to build this party, and I just don't want to see it all go down the drain because they aren't willing to fight for what we believe in. Our base is demanding we do something or they're going to leave us. The GOP brand is being damaged. We are having to work from scratch to do all the groundwork we've already done with elections of Republicans to Congress and in the state because everybody's so furious at the leadership. And that's exactly right. And the leadership has always been aware of it, folks. The leadership has been well aware of what the voters that elected them want. They've been well aware they have not come through. And their attitude is tough toenails. You guys don't understand the jobs we have. You don't understand what it takes to get things done here. You guys don't understand that it takes compromise. You guys don't understand that you have to build coalitions. You guys, this is McConnell and Boehner talking to us. You guys don't understand that we have to work with people on the other side to get anything done. No. That's not what we don't understand. What we see is you doing exactly that, getting snookered every time you go into battle with them. Literally getting snookered. Or if you're not even playing and being just ramrodded right over. Anyway, I don't need to repeat the drill. You all get it. But this, Mr. Villaire, he is a Republican National Committee co-chair. He's the Louisiana chairman. From the Politico, they gave an op-ed space here to Michael Needham of Heritage Action for America. He's the CEO. Boehner betrayed his party. Why the Speaker's resignation is great news for conservatives. And there's 3 interesting pull quotes here. He ignored the hopes and dreams of those Republican voters who delivered Republican control of the House in 2010, the Senate in 2014, and instead pushed the agenda of Washington's ruling class. Yep, no mistake there. Here's the reality. In the past, politicians could afford to tell their constituents one thing and do something entirely else in office, which happens, by the way. You know, what they're doing is nothing new. What is new about it? Politicians lying is nothing new. Promising and then not delivering is nothing new. What's different about it this time? What do you think is different about it, Mr. Snerdley? Well, that they did put up the pretense. They made it look like they were opposing. What's different now is they can't hide. There is simply too much news. There is too much tech. There is too much access. They can't hide behind what goes on behind closed doors, for example. It's all known. They can't hide behind any other barrier. Everything they're doing is right out in the open. And it's not being reported by the drive-by media. The drive-by media is doing everything they can to shelter these guys and protect them because it helps the Democrats to have Boehner and McConnell be doing what they're doing. Now, this is all being ferreted out by other members of Congress, the conservative caucus, for example, or others who are able to get the news out on their own without having to go through a network. So they don't have any secrets. Everything they're doing has been exposed. They can't rely on, you don't know how it works up here. Because now everybody does. Everybody now knows how it works. You realize what a monumental thing, seriously now, folks, stop and think of it. Do you realize what a profound, who was that? Was that Bill Clinton I was just looking at? Tell me that wasn't Clinton on Fox? I was going to say, he looked 95 years old. I said, whoa, what happened? That was a NASA guy? Or they're telling us about the flowing waters on Mars? Yeah, you watch. That's going to be Martian. 5. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, cool. My prediction has come true even before the program ends today. If you're on line 5 out there and you know who you are, hold on. If you're in Wichita, hang on. Don't hang up the phone. What is profound? You realize how profound it is that practically every Republican voter now knows what has been a secret in Washington for a long time. And that is, in Washington, there really aren't Republicans and Democrats. There's majority and minority. But they're all of the same insider or ruling class or whatever you call it, elite mindset. Their agendas are identical. And it is profound that the lid has been totally blown off of that. For the longest time, Republican voters actually believed that Republican elected officials were genuinely an opposition party and were pushing back and wanted to push back and opposed and disagreed with what the Democrats were doing. And the realization that's not the case, that's why this explosion's taken place. Republican voters simply aren't going to put up with it. I don't care what the issue. Amnesty, Obamacare, Keystone Pipeline. You have a Democrat president as radical as Obama is for 7 years and gets everything he wants. Sorry, you can't fool people. You can't convince them. As essentially McConnell, actually, his fallback excuse is, first is we need the Senate, or we need the House. No, I'm sorry, we need the Senate. We gave the Senate, and then the fallback, we don't have the White House. There's still nothing we can do. Everything we do is going to be vetoed. And so that has led to we're not even going to fight. And you don't understand. We can't fight. You want us to fight, but that would be a losing proposition. That would result in governments being shut down. We can't have that. And then they used to be able to get away with it is the point. They don't any longer. And I believe all these stories about McConnell being next. People serious about this. This is the country we're talking about here. From Gerald Seib in the Wall Street Journal, Boehner's exit leaves Republican establishment shaking. Tea Party forces increase power and further loosen Republican establishment's grip. Now, I'm not sure the establishment's actually shaking, but this is a start. I don't know how long ago it was I said. I mean, it's a long time now. I mean, it would happen when people would call here and advance the notion that we had to go third party. And that's been going on for most of the 27 years. And each time somebody would call and say, nope, what we need to do is take over the Republican. Third party is not going to get anybody anywhere. Third party isn't going to win. Third party isn't going to have any members of Congress or the Senate. It may now be happening. First step, but it may now be happening. Okay, Donald Trump and his tax plan, an economic plan. He has released it. And here are the highlights. No tax would be assessed against individuals' earning. There will be a major tax reduction. Trump says in unveiling the plan, it'll simplify the code, it'll grow the economy at a level that it hasn't seen for decades. Tax would be zero for 31 million households that now pay tax. The highest individual rate would be 25% versus the current top rate of 39.6%. The number of rates would be consolidated from 7 to 4. The rates would be 0, 10, 20, and 25. The plan would impose 10% tax on overseas profits, and it would place immediate tax on overseas earnings. That's a tax that can now be deferred. And then, of course, there's the obligatory here, the attack on the carried interest portion, the low tax rate that hedge fund people earn. So let's go to the Trump sound bites as he explains this. Oops, what did I do with them? Here they are over here. I put them on the other side. This is this morning in New York City at Trump Tower. Trump had a press conference to talk about his tax plan. We have 3 sound bites. Here they are.
We're going to cut the individual rates from 7 brackets to 4. Simplification. 25%, 20%, 10%, and 0. If you're single and earn less than $25,000 per year, or married and jointly earn less than $50,000. So, very important. If you're single and earn less than $25,000 or married and jointly earn less than $50,000, you'll not pay any income tax. Nothing.
Okay, what do you think of that? You don't like it? Why don't you like it? Right, okay. Here's the problem with that for me. If you're not paying any tax, it's an incentive to stay at that earning level. It's an How many people do we hear about now who do not want a raise or don't even want to find a job because they will then no longer qualify for welfare? All right, that's the first bout. Here's the next one. This is the bite where he calls the elimination for the alternative minimum tax, a death tax, and the hated carried interest exemption.
This eliminates very strongly and quickly the marriage penalty, very unfair penalty. It eliminates the AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax. It ends the death tax. It's a double taxation. A lot of families go through hell over the death tax. It reduces or eliminates most of the deductions and loopholes available to special interests and to the very rich. In other words, it's going to cost me a fortune. It ends the current tax treatment of carried interest. Those are the hedge fund folks that I've been talking about for quite a while. They make a lot of money. Carried interest.
Got to take a break. I'll explain that again to you when we get back and much more. I want to get this call before the guy has to hang up, folks. We'll get back to Trump here in just a second. I need to also ask you are you hearing a different Trump now? Yeah, Snerdley's nodding his head. I'm just asking you, are you hearing a different Trump or a difference in Trump now? But all that in due course. Here's Corey in Wichita. Glad you called. Great to have you on the program, Corey. Hi.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you very much. Giga-dittos, Rush. Mega isn't enough. Once again, your prescience has paid off. At the noon news hour here in Wichita, I heard ABC interviewing the NASA scientist talking about the water on Mars.
Yeah.
And how it could lead to proof that there was life or something.
Right.
So the ABC reporter, the female reporter, I don't remember her name, did come on and say Mars may have been more like Earth at one time, but she basically related it. Climate change may have brought about its desolate condition now. She didn't say those words, but pretty much they were equating climate change to Mars's condition now. And I was just floored when I heard this.
Well, now, wait a minute. You said that the ABC info babe did that in her question. Well, what did the NASA guy say in response?
Oh, no. It wasn't even an interview. It was, she was just playing his soundbite talking about it. Finding flowing salt water.
This Infobabe journalist offered her opinion in the story?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's why I misunderstood. Journalists don't do that
right?
very much. That's why I was confused. So this, the Infobabe...
that's why I had to get a hold. I had to call in. I've been trying for almost 30 years to call you, and I get in on this one. But I could improve your percentage of being right, because this one did it in minutes, not weeks, days, months. Days,
yeah, but we have to be
right
honest.
Around the corner.
We have to be. This is just an Infobabe doing it. And I'll take being right. I mean, I'm never going to throw that out. But until the NASA people say it, we know the drive-bys. I mean, that's why I was curious. She wasn't interviewing the NASA guy. She was doing a report on the NASA guy. And she said, she just offered that it could well be that there had been climate change on Mars. Imagine that. And equating it to, of course, what's happening. There's climate change every freaking place in the universe, for crying out loud. There's climate change on Jupiter. The climate's changing. Everything everywhere is always changing. Nothing is static. Everything changes always. But I will not be proven right until some NASA guy, and it'll happen, even if he's led to it in questioning by a drive-by journalist, and until an actual scientist makes the claim, I will not actually say I've been right yet. Well, I think we can proclaim that I have been right. U.S. News and World Report today, quote, eons ago, ancient Mars had an extensive atmosphere along with an ocean 2/3 the size of our northern hemisphere and a mile deep, said Jim Green, the director of planetary science at NASA. Press conference today. Okay, now, look, how did they know that? How did they know that there was an ocean 2/3 the size of the northern, and that it was a mile deep? We haven't been there. We haven't probed a mile down on my. You may not remember this, and folks, I'm sorry if you think I'm a natural skeptic. It's not that I distrust. As a matter of course, I've learned this. And it really hasn't taken any more than the propaganda and the phony science of global warming to make me doubt. I mean, we've had people claiming, starting in 88, that we had 10 years to clean the oceans or we were going to die. Or in 1982, that we had 20 years to stop global warming, or that was going to be the end of this, and the polar bears are dying, the North Pole was supposed to have melted by now. None of it's come true. These are all predictions about many, many years in the future. Minimum 20 years, most likely 50 to 100 years. And there's safety in a prediction like that because nobody's going to be alive to know whether it came true or not. It doesn't take any courage to predict what something's going to be 50 years from now or 100. It does take courage to predict what the climate's going to do the next 3 years. And you'll note we never hear that, do we? You ever heard a climate prediction for 2017? Have you heard a climate predict sea levels, Arctic ice, any of the other aspects of global warming or climate change? Do you hear any predictions of the next 2 years or 3? No, the only predictions we get are for 30 years from now, 50, 100 years from now, but never tomorrow, never next month, never next year. Which do you think would be easier to predict? Next year or 100 years from now? And then realize all this stuff is not based on any data whatsoever. It's all based on computer models predicting things. This guy, Mr. Green, Jim Green at NASA, may be a perfectly nice guy. But I'm sorry. The days where I listen to some scientists come out and say, yeah, there used to be Mars 2/3 covered with water and it was a mile deep. Because what comes next, He's the director of planetary science at NASA, and he said, after an unknown catastrophe, Mars suffered a major climate change and lost its surface water. Now, doesn't that fit amazingly well with the scaremongering they are engaging in about planet Earth? Was it Mars's version of Hurricane Katrina, do you think? And was there a President Bush on Mars at the time? No, Mr. Snerdley, I'm not joking here. I'm really serious about this. An unknown catastrophe. Unknown. How do we know then? If we're going to admit that it was an unknown catastrophe, how in the name of Sam Hill do we know what it was? And that it was brought on by climate change. Yes, sirree, Bob, that's what it was, folks. After an unknown catastrophe, Mars suffered a major climate change and lost its surface water. Well, of course, that's different than what they're saying here. The unknown catastrophes here are known, and they're going to cause us to be flooded by surface water. In 2007, February 28th, National Geographic, Mars melt hints at solar, not human cause for warming. This is National Geographic 8 years ago saying that data that we had collected on Mars now tends to indicate that it's the sun and not man that's causing changes on Earth. You think anybody today is going to go back and revisit that story in light of the discovery of flowing water on Mars? This is no different than a 5-year-old girl being rehearsed and programmed to walk out to visit the Pope in the middle of the street in Washington and hand him a note asking him for his support on illegal immigration. Sorry, folks, I'm not buying any of it. The evidence suggests that you shouldn't either. National Geographic had a long story just 8 years ago. Same scientists discovered that solar activity is what destroyed Mars. But now today, it's climate change. Unknown catastrophe brought on by climate change. I think this is, I have a word for this, not criminal, but this is dangerously incompetent. This is the attempted manipulation of people that, to me, this is hideous. To try to make something like this sound certain, without doubt. I don't know. It just irritates the heck out of me. Unknown catastrophe. We know that an unknown catastrophe, some years ago, brought on by climate change, destroyed all the water on Mars. And you watch how many people are going to be running around talking about it now. Yeah, man, it was really bad on Mars. Did you hear what happened on Mars? Why couldn't they have discovered a Starbucks up there so half of the Looney Tunes on this planet would want to leave? Why couldn't this falling water they've discovered be a Starbucks or something? Or a giant Nike store? Alex in Buffalo, New York, welcome to the EIB Network. Hello.
Hello, Rush. First-time caller after 25 years. Glad to speak with you.
Thank you, Alex, very much.
First of all, I was born and raised a Catholic, so I am certifiably Catholic. And I've always admired your ability to look at the big picture on these issues, and I was sort of waiting to see what your take would be on this. When was the last time a healthy, living pope was suddenly replaced by another pope in the Catholic Church?
Yes. I don't remember the last time a living pope, but I do know the last time a pope lived for a month after he was named pope. That'd be Pope John Paul. He mysteriously passed away not long after he was named Pope, and that's how we got John Paul II.
That's correct.
But you're talking about Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedictus.
Yes.
Who just up and quit one day, and he's still around, and he's still living in papal headquarters in Italy. But they deposed him, or he wanted it. Well, whatever. Your question, when's the last time we ever remember that happening? I, of course, don't remember it happening.
No, I'm asking the question because I think it answers itself if you subscribe to the theory that maybe there is an agenda behind the Pope's comments. And it's strange that you called today, and it's really strange that you happened to get through today, in addition to calling, because I now remember, and I'm angry at myself because I did not print this out. And I didn't print it out because I wasn't going to talk about it because it sounds so over the top. I read it over the weekend, and I've still got it somewhere. I save everything, and I have a very, very clever tagging system. I'm going to be able to find this. It was a story about a current member of the College of Cardinals who has written his biography. Or maybe it's not an autobiography, but it's a biography. One of the two. He's living, still alive. This biography that has either the galleys have been seen or it is soon to be published. An Italian cardinal, according to somebody who's seen the book, says that there is a liberal contingent in the College of Cardinals that wants the church to modernize, wants to open the church up to divorce, abortion under certain circumstances, gay marriage, and so forth. And that they engineered the removal of Pope Benedict and had chosen this pope, a cardinal from Argentina, because they thought he was the best one to carry their message. In other words, and the source for this is the cardinal himself and his biography. It's not somebody on the outside, like at the National Enquirer, saying they've seen this or heard about it. The source is actually from the particular cardinal who's engineered all this biography. So proud of it that they're not even trying to hide what they did, that it's eventually going to be published in the man's book. It either has been published or it's soon to be. And you can understand maybe why I didn't print this out and make a big deal about it, because it does sound kind of far out. But when you look at every other institution around that seems to have been overrun, overtaken, or corrupted, however you want to describe it, by the left, it doesn't seem that far above and beyond reality. Let me take a brief time, and I'm going to find this using my expert search and tag system here. We'll have the details when we get back. Don't go away, folks. Sit tight. Okay, here we go. Stephen Hayward at Powerline is where I first saw this. The mystery of Pope Francis. Was there a Vatican coup? Now, Hayward is not a kook of any kind, nor is Powerline. Powerline is the site you may remember that exposed Dan Rather's fraud on that National Guard story. The article I was talking about 3 days ago, the National Catholic Register ran a very curious article about the contents of a newly published authorized biography of retired Belgian Cardinal Godfried Daniels, or Daniels, it's Danneels. And the Catholic Register article reports, quote, further serious concerns are being raised about Cardinal Godfried Daniels, one of the papal delegates chosen to attend the upcoming Ordinary Synod on the Family, after the Archbishop Emeritus of Brussels, that's him, confessed this week to being part of a radical mafia reformist group opposed to Pope Benedict XVI.
In other words, this cardinal, this retired cardinal, has admitted that there is a coup, that there was a mafia of leftist cardinals that engineered the removal of Pope Benedict. At the launch of the book in Brussels this week, the cardinal said he was part of a secret club of cardinals opposed to Pope Benedict. He called it a mafia club that bore the name of St. Gallen. The group wanted drastic reforms of the church to make it much more modern, and for Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, that's the current pope, to head it. The group also comprised Cardinal Walter Casper and the late Jesuit Cardinal Carlo Maria Martini. It's been documented in Austin Ivory's biography of Pope Francis, the Great Reformer. So there's a book that says this stuff, and it's an authorized biography of this retired pope. And I first read about it when I was checking out Powerline over the weekend. Don't expect there be anything made of this. I can't imagine that there would be. One final Donald Trump soundbite, and we'll come here back from the break at the top of the hour and start opening phones on what Trump's tax plan, his economic plan, how you receive it, what you think of it, some of the other news on the Republican presidential campaign. The final Trump soundbite. Well, first, let me explain carried. Carried interest is the rate of taxation that hedge fund operators pay. I don't know the history of it. I'm assuming that they have so much power because they have so much money that they have been able to craft a special section of the tax code for their type of business. Carried interest implies that their profits are not immediate, that their profits are deferred and taken over the passage of time, and because of that, they have secured a lesser tax rate. Now, I don't know what the reason is. That's just an educated guess. But the fact is that hedge fund operators they do not pay the 39.6% rate because their income is not categorized as ordinary earned income. It's called carried interest. And again, these economic people come up with their own lexicon purposely to keep people in the dark, to where you need a translation app to understand what they're talking about. And this is what Trump says that he is going to change, because he doesn't think that there are this many, uber wealthy people that need to get this kind of a tax break. And I've had a lot of people send me an email, Rush, this is dangerous. This sounds exactly like Obama's tax. This sounds exactly like what the liberals propose, taxing the rich. I can take you back, if you want, to the 1980s and Ronald Reagan saying the same thing about super rich. In fact, I'll do that in the next segment. Here's the final Trump bite, though. This is the ripping of Obama and building a soccer field for Club Gitmo terrorists. Listen to this.
I have a habit. When you get a bill, you call up and you negotiate. To me, that's a compliment. I want to take that thinking to the White House. I would bet you we could save 20% of our budget. We just spent $1 million building a soccer field, okay? A soccer field for our prisoners that happen to be in Guantanamo, okay? I don't like that. Why are they playing soccer is my question.
Why are they playing soccer? But he also went on to say, a flat piece of land. We didn't even have to excavate. Why do we spend $1 million to build a soccer field for terrorist prisoners at Club Gitmo? Got to take a break. We'll be back. Don't go. By the way, there's another source, another story on this supposed secret group at the Vatican that got rid of Pope Benedict. So they're not even making it a secret. It's out there, but it's just there. It's not going anywhere. Got to take a break here at the top, my friends, but one big, fast-moving final hour coming right up. Yes, sirree, welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Happiest period of my day, being here with all of you. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And if you want to send an email, it's rushbo at eibnet.com. I checked the email during the break, as you know. Now, folks, contrary to what is thought to be the case out there, I haven't signed on to the Trump campaign. I'm not a Trump guy. Everybody's assuming that I'm a Trump supporter. And you know why they assume that? It's not from anything I've said. It's because I'm not a Trump hater. And that's the better description. I don't hate Trump. I'm not worried about Trump. I'm not alarmed about what Trump is doing. And a lot of people have said, you know, if you were consistent, you would be opposing Trump the way you opposed Perot back in 1992. And, you know, I've pondered that. I pride myself on being consistent when it comes to ideology and politics. I mean, I'm not a phony baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and roll, and I don't change what I believe with the wind. And I don't tell people I believe things I don't believe, and vice versa. I can honestly tell you that the Trump candidacy has in no way looked to me similar to the Perot candidacy. I'll tell you why. My instincts back in 1992, when the Perot phenomenon began, told me, and they were eventually borne out, that Perot was not in this race or in that race to win it, that there was something else going on. And even when he launched his campaign, and even when he was out showing up in debates and campaigns, there was something that told me he still wasn't serious about winning. But instead, I really did have the impression that he was attempting to, sabotage. I thought there was a vendetta. I thought he had something going on with George H.W. Bush. It turned out that there was something there, and it involved the Reagan administration and supposedly missing and then discovered prisoners of war in Vietnam. But the Trump candidacy, I've never thought that Trump wasn't serious once he got into it. Now, I'm one of the people that didn't think he would actually pull the trigger and run. But when people tell me now, can he win or is he serious, I always say I think he's serious. He may drop out at some point. But to me, the two things are just different. And a lot of people, you oppose Perot, and you get the same reasons for opposing Trump, but you're not opposing Trump. By the way, things are a lot different today than they were then, too. Vastly different. But anyway, that's the best answer I can give you, is that, and I even predicted back then that that Perot would not finish the race. I predicted that he would get out if it began to look like he was going to win. And he did, if you recall. And then he came back in later, a second time. Remember when he got out, he said that it was because he had discovered that people were planning on hijacking or sabotaging his daughter's wedding. I forget the specific details. Anyway, that's just to answer these numerous email inquiries. But the point is here, people do fall in certain camps, and I think there are Trump haters out there, particularly on the Republican side. I'm not one of those. And because I'm not a Trump hater, some are assuming, well, then I must be a Trump guy. I'm a nobody guy right now. And I've explained why I have this policy or philosophy during primaries. I'll explain it one more time, especially at a primary policy or campaign this long. Folks, I do not have anything to say about any of these campaigns. I don't know where these guys are going to go, and Carly Fiorina, I don't know what they're going to say from day to day. I have no idea how they're going to change, if they're not going to change. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I just do not feel confident hitching my wagon this far out. Now, many people say, but you could make the difference if you would. Maybe. I don't believe that. I think there are too many forces at work out there for any one individual to determine the outcome of something like this. It's more that I want to be here next year and the year after that and whatever years not continuing that I want to do this. I want to be here, and I don't want my credibility compromised in the process. And my attitude has always been that politicians come and go. They win and lose. It's the name of their game. It's the nature of their game. And so I just sit back and observe. I think the primary process is ideal for winnowing out those who can do it and those who can't. And this primary process is proving most fascinating in ways nobody would have predicted. And I think there's even a bigger surprise than Trump right now, and that's Ben Carson. In terms of the establishment and pretty much anybody else, if you would have told people that Ben Carson would be a factor 6 months ago, I don't think anybody would have taken you seriously. And if you would have then further said that Ben Carson's going to be very close to the lead and that the establishment chosen candidates are going to be so low that you need a microscope to see them, that would have been tough to believe too. So I sit back and observe these things and comment on them as they go, which is exactly what I've been doing here. And because I have not expressed disgust for or anger at or fear of Trump, people are assuming that I'm a Trump guy. But let's move from that on to this talk about his plan, which I have here. I haven't had a chance. It came in after the program started, and I have not had a chance to delve into it. But a lot of people are getting on his case for sounding a lot like Democrats. I've had some email from people. Oh, my God, I just saw the Trump tax plan. Rush, it looks just like Obama's. It looks like just like Clinton's, like it's a tax the rich tax plan. And I don't think that's the case. Now, again, it's limited how much detail I've been able to absorb here, but what I've been able to see of it so far, I don't think he's talking about the rich as the left talks about the rich. When the left talk about the rich, they mean anybody. Well, in 1996, the rich was anybody of $50,000 or above. Today, it's not much more than that. And that's not who Trump's talking about. Trump is talking about the 1% of the 1%. He's talking about some of these really highfalutin, he calls them the hedge fund guys, who aren't effectively paying nothing. Now, I went back, I mentioned to you that you can find, in the 1980s, you can find evidence of Ronald Reagan with similar tax proposals to what I have seen of the Trumpsters. If you go back to May of 1985, after the first Reagan tax cuts, he proposed even more tax reform. He made a speech. And in the speech announcing his new proposals, which included slashing taxes for families, as Trump has done today. In that same speech, Reagan said the following: under our new tax proposal, the oil and gas industry will be asked to pick up a larger share of the national tax burden. The old oil depletion allowance will be dropped from the tax code except for wells producing less than 10 barrels a day. By eliminating this special preference, we'll go a long way toward ensuring that those that earn their wealth in the oil industry will be subject to the same taxes as the rest of us. It's only fair. Continue our drive for energy independence. The current treatment of the costs of exploring and drilling for new oil will be maintained. We are determined to cut back on special preferences that have too long favored some industries at the expense of others. We would repeal the investment tax credit. We would reform the depreciation system. Incentives for research and experimentation, however, would be preserved. There is one group of losers in our tax plan, Reagan said in May of 1985. The one group of losers in our tax plan are those individuals and corporations who are not paying their fair share, or for that matter, any share. These abuses cannot be tolerated. From now on, they shall pay a minimum tax. The free rides are over. Now, some of this may come as a surprise to some of you because the impression of Reagan and taxes is that it was slash, 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 cut, cut, cut. And, of course, by the time the left gets through with what Reagan did, the rich weren't paying anything. I don't know how many of you, because that has been part of the left's history revisionism since the 1980s. I don't know how many of you think that Reagan got rid of taxes on the rich. But it's just the exact opposite, folks. The rich ended up paying more after Reagan's tax reform. And the way it was made to happen was not by raising their rates, it was by lowering their rates and getting rid of all these silly brackets where income could be sheltered for crazy wacko investments. Deductions, they were called. Reagan got rid of the top marginal rate was 90% when he took office. Maybe it was 70% when he took office. 70 or 90. We did have a 90% tax rate at some point. Maybe 70 when he took office. And when he left office, it was now 28%. So what happened is that it became much easier and attractive for the wealthy to declare their income and only pay 28 cents of every dollar, rather than go through a much complicated procedure to try to avoid a 90% bracket that was paid on, of course, the last dollars people earned. How else do you explain, after Reagan's tax cuts, you figure this has always been the story I've tried to use to explain tax cuts generating revenue. 1981, Reagan takes office. Top marginal rate, 70%. The amount of revenue collected via the tax code is about $500 billion. 8 years later, Reagan leaves. The top rate's down to 28% from 70, and the amount of money collected from the tax codes almost doubled to $900-some-odd billion by reducing the rates. When they tell Democrats about this, the Democrats, well, that doesn't matter to me. That's why it's not fair that the rich only pay 28%. It's not fair. We need a higher rate on them. It's not about the revenue to them. It's about punishment. So when I look at Trump's tax proposal here, and again, it's a cursory glance, it doesn't look like a left-wing tax plan to me. It looks like and sounds like, in fact, like maybe some people that helped Reagan put his together are working for Trump. It's that close. You know, oil and gas has been replaced by the carried interest hedge fund guys. But clearly there are people today, as there were then, who weren't paying any tax, and Reagan made sure that that was ended. Contrary to what people have been told, that Reagan cut taxes for the rich, it's just the exact opposite. He might have cut rates or implemented low rates on income that was not taxed at all, but the rich ended up paying more, and they still are, by the way. You've seen the numbers on the 50% of all taxes are paid by the top 2% of wage earners. It's really kind of out of balance now. But my point is that no one, despite all of this, no one cut taxes of every kind more than Ronald Reagan did. Individual tax rates, corporate tax rates, nobody cut taxes more or better than Reagan did. Yet in order to flatten tax rates and increase deductions of certain kinds, which was intended to spur growth and assist families, he insisted on closing some loopholes in exchange for lowering the rates. Well, I'm sorry, it seems like exactly what Trump is doing. And again, I hedge this on the basis that I just have a cursory glance at this. But Trump's talking about 4 rates, and one of them is 0. So actually there's 3 black brackets, 10, 20, and 30. Or 5, 10, and 20, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's 20. 25 is the top marginal rate now is 39.6. So he's going to cut taxes for everybody. You know, I still think this is too complicated. You know, I'm for a fair tax or flat tax. You know, 15, 18% and be done with it. I know that's never going to happen. I know that the tax code writers are never going to give up their power. We'd have to elect a whole brand new Congress. But nevertheless, that's what I favor. But let's not sit here and pretend that Trump's tax plan is Bernie Sanders. This is something that people that don't like Trump are going to drag out now to try to scare his supporters, to make it look like Trump's tax plan is Obama's or it's Bernie Sanders or it's the Clintons or what have you. And I just don't think that's the case, folks. And back to the phones we go. This is Ellis in St. Louis. Hi, Ellis. Great to have you with us. Hi.
Hi, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet, sir.
I'm a 25-year listener, a long-time 24/7 subscriber.
Appreciate that.
I'm just about Trump's or any other politician's tax plan, when they say they're going to tax the rich, in my opinion, it's a political misdirection. Rich they're rich because they have created or have what people want, and raising taxes on the rich is only going to raise costs for consumers. It's kind of like you've talked about crony capitalism, and Warren Buffett well knows he supports higher taxes because he knows that neither he nor his companies are actually going to have to pay that. They will raise prices. They are a conduit they'll remit the taxes to the government.
Well, Warren Buffett's case, that's right, but that's not why he proposes higher taxes. He does it for strictly personal PR reasons.
That may be, but in general, companies, larger companies, I think, have less objection to higher taxes because they have a greater ability to pass the taxes along. Small businesses have less.
Hold it. You can't just say. I understand the economic theory that businesses don't pay taxes; they pass along the taxes to customers. However, in a competitive environment like we have now, with a slow economy, sometimes raising prices is not the best thing you can do. Raising prices can sometimes do great damage to your bottom line. So it's not automatic or axiomatic that you can get away with passing on increased costs or taxes in the form of prices for your product. But that's not really what you're addressing. You're saying you don't like Trump talking about taxing the rich because you think it's pandering, my guess is. You think it's just he's trying to do the same thing that other politicians do by telling them they're going to be better off because he's going to go get the rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you just wish he wouldn't do that. He's different, and you wish he wouldn't talk about the rich the way every other politician does.
I think it's just disingenuous. So I don't.
Well, it is, in a sense. I don't know about disingenuous, but it's an automatic political win-win. The rich are never going to defend themselves. The rich are never going to come out and bellyache about anybody saying their taxes ought to go up. They're going to shut up about it and deal with it and realize that it isn't going to happen. But they're not going to complain about it. And it is a way of I don't know, pandering may not be the best word, but it's a way of trying to let the little guy know that you're on his side, but you're going to go out and get the rich. And it is a Democrat tactic. But don't forget, Reagan used it too. That was my point in the previous segment, is that Reagan based his taxation of these rich entities on the basis they weren't paying anything or very little, and that everybody needs some skin in the game. But Reagan's tax cut approach was always aimed at economic growth. It was aimed at prosperity. It was aimed philosophically at your money. The presumption that all money is government's, and what you end up with is what they decide to let you keep. That's what Reagan attacked, that whole line of thinking. It's your money, and what government gets, however much or little it is, it's up to government to live within that means and not act like every dollar in the planet is theirs. Anyway, I understand you're looking for Trump to be different, and when you heard him go after the rich on taxes, you thought you were hearing just another politician, and that's what you don't want to hear from Donald Trump. The saga continues. A man, a legend, a way of life. I have been waiting for this next story to happen. And I have been wondering where this story was going to be when it did happen. You might remember that in the last 10 days or 2 weeks, the New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady publicly said that he thinks it'd be cool if Donald Trump became president. Now, this does not happen much. Professional athletes making such high-profile endorsements. But beyond that, the sports media is as far left-wing as the news media is, and maybe even further left-wing in some cases. So what do I have here? I have an outraged Sports Illustrated story. Headline, Tom Brady needs to answer questions about his support for Donald Trump. Really? Why? Why does Brady have to answer any questions about this? It's by Aaron Leibowitz, and the story starts this way. For many, that was reason enough to cheer the four-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. Brady's reputation, though damaged, was on the mend. And then Brady expressed support for Donald Trump. It started September 8th when one of Trump's Make America Great Again trucker hats was spotted in Brady's locker. By the way, that's another thing. I'm starting to see people make fun of the baseball caps that Trump wears. Like this guy, like a trucker hat. It's a baseball cap. What is there to make fun about the cap? No, it's not what it says on it. They're not making fun. They're making fun of the way it looks. Well, and that it says "Make America Great Again." That, to people on the left, is kind of banal to make it good. That's cheap theatric patriotism, and they frown on that. But Trump's baseball caps look different than any other baseball cap you're going to buy out there. Now, the official baseball cap in this country is made by New Era. New Era makes all the baseball caps for all the Major League Baseball teams. They do make the best baseball cap out there. If you want the authentic cap worn by your favorite baseball team, find one made by New Era. And get one that's sized, not one of those adjustable things in the back with different holes and you can change the size. That's not what the professionals wear. They wear hats that are personally sized to their noggins. But Trump's is a different design. It's got a crease in the crown, and it's bigger, and it's made for people with big faces. Nothing looks stupider than a big-faced guy wearing a tiny cap. Trump is smart in this way, and these are the caps. Now, his caps are not New Era. I have one, but I don't know. I can't remember the manufacturer. I'm just throwing in the New Era stuff. This guy calls Trump's caps trucker caps. Anyway, story goes on. Brady explained that Trump had given the hat to Patriots owner Robert Kraft to pass along to Trump, or to Brady. Trump, Brady said, always gives me a call and different types of motivational speeches at different times. He said their friendship dates back to 2002, adding that it's pretty amazing what he's been able to accomplish. He obviously appeals to a lot of people. He's a hell of a fun guy to play golf with. Then on September 16th, Brady was asked if Trump has a shot at becoming president. He said, I hope so. That would be great. There'd be a putting green on the White House lawn. I'm sure of that. This guy adds, there's already a putting green on the White House lawn. Snark, snark, snark. Now, on the one hand, back to the story, on the one hand, Brady did not say point blank that he is voting for Trump, nor did he say he endorses Trump's policies, but he had two chances to distance himself from the nation's most polarizing figure at the moment, and he chose not to. That would be great, is as close to an official endorsement as you can get. And Brady's words carry weight. He is one of the most recognizable figures in the country. An entire subsection of New England, young and old, worships him. While he has every right to be friends with Trump, endorsing him for president means endorsing or at least not condemning what Trump stands for. Slapping a golf joke on the end does not change that. And here I thought, imagine me, my naivete, I thought it was okay. I thought an American citizen could support whoever he wanted without being derided for it. But apparently to Sports Illustrated, it's not cool, and Brady's got some explaining to do here. Back to the story. Of course, athletes endorsing candidates is nothing new. In 2012, Obama's supporters included LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Derek Jeter, and Cristiano Ronaldo. By using their fame to take political stands, athletes open themselves up to scrutiny. That takes courage. But once you express support for a candidate, whether you're a public figure or not, you need to be prepared to explain yourself. Really? Why do you have to explain yourself? And to who? Sports writers? I don't think LeBron James was asked to explain himself. I think he was applauded, wasn't he? And by the way, this guy leaves out Dan Rooney, the owner of the Steelers, who ran one of Obama's campaign operations in Pennsylvania, 2008. And nobody made him explain why. Why does Brady have to explain himself here? Says here, perhaps Brady would be perfectly willing to discuss Trump's views, and he has just not been asked to do so. So far, though, his praise of the candidate has been surface level and said with a chuckle. Brady may not even want to go any deeper than that, but he should. The implications of Trump as president of the United States are serious. Really, I think the implications of Barack Obama as president were damn serious, too, but nobody in Sports Illustrated seemed bothered by that, as I recall. Man, what is this? By aligning with Trump, the candidate, Brady is by default aligning himself with Trump. The xenophobe, Trump the Islamophobe, Trump the misogynist. If Brady takes issues with those aspects of the man, he should say something. Otherwise, the implication is, on some level, that he condones Islamophobia, xenophobia, and misogynism. And that would stand in direct conflict with Brady's supposed character. It says supposed in parentheses, character. When Brady talks, people listen. There's still plenty of time for Brady to distance himself from the ugly side of Trump. But continuing to embrace Trump, free of qualifiers or disclaimers, should be concerning to those who defend the quarterback's legacy. Does anybody remember when Sports Illustrated used to be a sports magazine? Does anybody remember that? I just saw Madeleine Albright on Fox, and it reminds me there's a whole stack of great stuff here I'm going to have to defer to tomorrow. I just didn't get to it. One of the stories in the stack is Madeleine Albright says that she was flying over the country recently, looking out the window. And when she looked down and she saw all this empty land that was just perfect for us to absorb more refugees from the Middle East. Honest to God. And Sports Illustrated is worried about Tom Brady liking Trump. Here's Madeleine Albright looking out the window of an airplane. Wow, look at all that empty space down there. Look at all the room we've got for refugees from the Middle East. Criminally. And I got all kinds of great stuff like that in the stack. I got Bob in Pensacola, Florida up next on the phones. Hi, Bob. How are you, sir?
Hey, Rush. Bob, when you've had that first segment and we're talking about the news about the events on Mars, it struck me right off the bat when a scientist was describing what happened to make the water disappear as catastrophic. And I don't know, to me the word catastrophic implies some sort of qualitative judgment, good or bad. And in my opinion, in the absence of any human activity or man at all on the planet, out in the middle of nowhere, geologic events they're neither good nor bad. They just are.
That's exactly right. It's a great point. How can something be catastrophic when there aren't any people around to feel a catastrophe?
Exactly. That tells me that science is corrupted when they're using terms like that about just a purely scientific observation about something that happened.
Exactly.
Who knows when.
Not just corrupted, but politicized.
Well, it seems that way.
It's a politically charged term. Climate, catastrophe, Mars. Used to be 2/3 covered by water, all gone. It was a half mile deep or a mile deep, whatever it was. I don't know how they know it, but that's exactly right. The Mars guys, the scientists said a catastrophic event related to climate change. How does anybody know that? How can anybody possibly... You won't remember this, folks. 1969 moon landing. Do you know why Armstrong was so careful in putting that first step on the moon? Because back in that day, and I'm not making this up, there were some who believed that the moon was quicksand. Honestly, look this up. There were some who thought that the surface of the moon was so soft that it would not support the weight of a lander or a human being. They really did. I remember reading this in the weeks leading up to the landing. And I thought it was a crackpot belief then. How in the world could anybody know? So they were just studying this from their telescope data and whatever from the moon. It was just a bunch of madcap scientists theorizing But that's why, I mean, there was a serious, I don't know how large it was, but there was a serious contingent at NASA that believed that that was possible. And that's why there was such trepidation. And there would have been trepidation anyway. It's a brand new place. Nobody's ever been there. But that's why. And there was no way anybody could have known. Now, it might have been wise to take precautions, but this is absurd, catastrophic event when nobody lives on Mars. Until they're going to tell us they did. Yep, and global climate change destroyed them. Don't rule it out, folks. We're dealing here with desperate leftists who will do anything to advance their agenda here on Earth. I know, but don't laugh. Hey, Cookie, give me the sound bites tomorrow that had my name in them today. I just didn't get a chance to get to them, but they're great illustrations of how I get defamed, so they're funny. Let's have them back here tomorrow, whatever else happens to. Thank you, folks. We'll be back tomorrow and fully revved. You do not want to miss it.